Hello and welcome to the TryPod Live. It is time for the NRL Prelim Finals. I'm Jacob Wynn. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and hopefully also YouTube as I speak. Just setting that, did I say YouTube? Instagram as well. Hopefully getting it all set up. I'm steering the ship again tonight because our man Clarky is living his best life, sailing the seven seas on a swinging cruise. But we're going to hear from him tonight remotely regarding the matches and off another Clarky's Collect. He's got something different for us to share. We also went 2-0 on best bets and a big mixed matchup win, which was nice in the semi-finals. I have the same number of plays to share with you all tonight. Thanks for joining us in the comments. We can see them flying in. And firstly, let me welcome back from the extravaganza preview at the hottest NRL tipster in the TryPod group this season. That would be Benny Howard. Benny, thanks for joining us again to break down the games tonight. I've got to start by asking you, have you won an official tip since I had you on 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, you've given me the hoodoo. We got done in the last. I think it was the last play of the game with the Knights one, so that was pretty unfortunate. But I was due a bad beat, so on a 0-2 run now instead of I think it was 18-0. So it's a bit of a different feeling. But anyway, we go on.
That's right. So that's going back to round 27. Sorry to bring up bad memories, but we both had Manly on the final game of final day of the regular season, and then you tipped Cowboys under 26.5 team total, and that's a game that's 16 all with 10 to go, and the Cowboys have they're lucky to win, let alone to cover, let alone to score 12 late points and score 28 and sink your best bet in week one of the finals. And I'm obviously a bit harsh on you saying you haven't had a winner since then, because being a selective tipster that you are, you didn't have a best bet last week. So that tip, that cruel beat is the most recent tip you've shared out. I can't wait to hear what you've got for the games ahead. But as we always do, we'll start with TryPod best bets. And I do have a couple to share coming in off a couple of, I would say, slightly higher scoring games last week. What the key notion to me that's going to be defining in these matches that we'll get into is that defense is king. It's hard for me to see either of these underdogs scoring a lot of points. You've got a rested Storm, rested Panthers at home. So I don't see the Roosters or Sharks scoring a lot of points this weekend. I can say that. And therefore, for these teams to be any chance of avoiding a blowout, they've got to be locked in and at their very best defensively. I'm also noticing this trend in the finals, less penalties, less 6 agains. That is defense friendly. So I'm going form of unders in both games, but I am playing them in a slightly different way. And as I speak, I've just backed one on Dabble, but we'll start with Storm Roosters. I want to play the first half under 22.5 points, $1.87 on Ladbrokes and Neds is your best price there. Don't forget, these two met in the finals last year, and the final score was 18-13, and it was actually 13-12 in the 79th minute. I don't think the Roosters are afraid of Melbourne, and I just think that if the Roosters are any chance, and I see you wearing your tricolours jersey, Benny, so I can't wait to hear what chance you give your boys, but they have to make it a grinding match. If it's a open and high-scoring game, it's hard to see the Roosters hanging in there. So maybe if you just believe Melbourne is going to be far too strong, you being the audience, you would steer away from unders, because I am giving these underdogs just that little bit of a chance of making it an interesting game. But with unders, you can actually get a blowout if the underdog is very much restricted, which is also a possibility. And that the same goes for Panthers Sharks, where my best bet will be under 7.5 tries. And that best price is $1.90 on Dabble, and I've backed that. You can copy that now. And for me, I was looking at the Panthers team total around 26 points, and maybe under 4.5 tries. I know that the Sharks are going to struggle mightily to score in this game. So I feel like, how many are you going to get out of Cronulla? Like 3 tries, absolute max, maybe 2. So it just comes down to whether you feel the Sharks can keep this competitive at all. And again, just going back to these trends and the Sharks' identity, I think the Sharks actually could be a little bit underrated and are tough enough to not be blown off the park here. And therefore, under 7.5 tries in a finals game, where I think teams would take the 2 when offered as well. And I don't have to worry about pretty sharp shooting goal kicking. That's the way I want to play that finals game. I won't even ask you, Benny, off the top, because I'll get into it, but I will give you the opportunity to critique my best bets. We've got 2 games we're going to deep dive. In fact, let's start there, because last time I had you on, mate, we talked overall about the finals, and one thing was locking in a price versus sort of letting it ride. Did you back anything kind of before the finals, or do you just want to talk about how that has actually shaped out now that we know what the prices are in the prelims?
Yeah, well, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, did any underdogs actually win first week of finals? Was
No
it?
one in the finals at all so far.
No, exactly. So I don't think you would get value from doing any of the futures. I may be wrong there. I haven't completely crunched the numbers, but yeah, I think like you're saying, or maybe you do because there wasn't any underdogs. Whereas if you did believe an underdog would win, you'd probably get more value. But no, I don't think any underdogs have won. So
yeah, and we can now say, knowing what has transpired, you'd have been better if you liked a team like Penrith or Melbourne to roll over, which is what we sort of suggested. I know that they had a second chance, so they didn't. Those teams did not end up needing that second chance. So for that reason, if you took Storm or Panthers first week of the finals and you rolled over and you roll over again this week, as long as Melbourne and Penrith meet in the final, which is the most likely, you're going to yield easily over $3 for either of those sides if you like them. However, if there's an upset this weekend, you would prefer to have locked in a price. So it does come back to locking in a price is good if there's a bit of chaos, but if status quo or most likely outcomes occur, usually you do go better off rolling over your money. So, for example, Penrith, $1.40 week 1 of the finals, $1.25 this week, and I want to get to what they might be in a final. But if we say it's anywhere from $1.80 to $2, you're still over $3 odds. But I do want to shout out the Padonas who gave us this Quinella, Melbourne and Penrith. And we're going to talk about whether anybody can stop that tip winning. But Padonas tipped it at $3, and now we know what all those individual legs would have been, because it was $1.30, $1.40 first week of the finals, and $1.25 is Penrith, $1.28 is Melbourne. That's just shy of $3. So the fact that Padonas tipped it at $3, if you rolled over, you may not even quite get $3. And remembering that if you tipped a Quinella before the first week of the finals, there was also that very unlikely but still possible path if both teams were defeated, they could meet the long way round. So that was a good play based on price as well.
Do you know how much it worked out to be, Winnie? The pricing? Do you roughly know what the
roll over? I think if you roll it all over, it's like $2.90 or something.
Yeah, so
but it also had 2 ways to win at the $3. And there's no doubt about it. It's a great bet to be sitting on now if you're in the audience and you did play that Quinella prior to the finals kicking off. Right, last question or topic I want to speculate on with you, Benny. We talked about what if it is a Storm Panthers grand final, how would you price that? And I think you said Storm $1.75, $1.80.
Yeah, that'd be about.
I had a similar sentiment. I had $1.80 Storm going into the finals. Have you changed your opinion on that? Could you give me kind of a conditional grand final line if it is the most likely?
Yeah, no injuries. I feel like it's probably spot on. Melbourne will get an extra day's rest as well. So I think if it was flipped, maybe I would $1.90 each, but I think the extra day's rest, $1.70, $1.75, maybe $1.80 around that sort of mark, depending on injuries. But yeah, no injuries, probably around that $1.80.
And in the comments, Harry Potter says $1.90. Let us know as well, everyone else's opinion. What would you price a grand final? We don't know how they're going to win. We don't know injury suspensions, of course. But who do you guys think will be favoured? Keep in mind, of course, the grand final is in Sydney. You make a good point about the 1 extra day's prep, although because the grand final is not till Sunday night, it's like a 9-day versus an 8-day turnaround, which is what we want. We want plenty of prep for these teams to be at their best. So while I did say Storm $1.80 going into the finals, I feel like a little bit of Nathan Cleary uncertainty was in my head. And now I've seen him get through a game and without any hiccups. I would have it at Pick'em now. I can't split them. I believe the Storm is maybe slightly better than Penrith, but then the Sydney factor might just bring them that little bit closer together. So I would probably alter that to a Pick'em. What about just top of your head, mate? If there's a big upset, Cronulla upsets Penrith, so it's a Storm Sharks. Like, what's your line in that game?
Oh yeah, probably $1.30 Storm.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of line are you thinking?
Probably that 9.5 Storm.
Yep, that's exactly what I wrote, 9.5. Panthers, Roosters, if it's a Roosters upset on Friday night.
Ooh, yeah. Probably minus 7.5 just because I feel like it's probably going to be lower scoring as well if it's a Panthers game.
I put minus 8. So thinking very similar to you. And what if we get the double underdog weekend and we get a Roosters Sharks granny?
$1.60 Roosters, maybe minus 3.5.
We're on the same wavelength, mate. Minus 3.5 I also had for the Roosters. And I posed this question to Tristan, which is where we'll go next. And we'll hear a bookie perspective as well as where the action has been heading into these two blockbuster fixtures.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sport, and we're into the penultimate week of rugby league, and it's an exciting time. The games last weekend, there was good action. There was a lot of multis from our perspective on the two favourites. So did make for a very ugly Saturday night because the Roosters obviously won comfortably and then all the favourite options saluted for the same game multi. So punters certainly got the edge over us on the weekend, and now we move into the two big games where we've got two very firm favourites. The Storm $1.28, the Panthers $1.25. The Storm line's gone from 9.5 out to 10.5, and the Panthers has stayed at 11.5, but it has firmed up the minus. I don't see any world other than favourites, minuses being the betting option from our customers over the weekend. You know, the two teams on paper look to be the sides will be very hard to beat, but you never know. In a one-off game, something might happen, but we've got a strong position on both the Panthers and the Storm to win the grand final. So we are very much going to be cheering for an upset, but I don't know if that's going to occur this weekend. And just looking forward to the grand final. The other thing that I do probably toss up, that if we do get a Melbourne-Penrith grand final, which will obviously be the worst result financially, it might be one of the best grand finals from a betting point of view in recent times. And I reckon the game, the two sides have been very, very close to Pick'em for the last few weeks. Obviously, Nathan Cleary coming back in. The Panthers have now just jumped over the top of the Storm in terms of betting, and obviously it depends if there's any injuries this weekend. But I reckon if the Panthers do take on the Storm in the grand final, I'd probably put the Panthers up slight favourites, maybe $1.85, $1.95, maybe $1.82, something in that vicinity. It'll be very, very close. If the Sharks and the Roosters face off, obviously the two upsets, you'd probably have the Roosters maybe $1.70, $2.15, and if either the Panthers or the Roosters take on one of the opposite sides, I would expect that we'd have a market very, very similar for either combination than what we have now. Maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter about the roughy. They're $3.65 the Roosters and $4 about the Sharks at the moment. So I'd probably think maybe that $1.35, $3.30 mark for either the combination of the Storm Sharks or Panthers Roosters, just because of the fact that one of these rougher sides has knocked off one of the big guns to get there. So that's my thought process. Looking forward to a great weekend of football. Obviously, I enjoyed. If you're having a punt and a wager, and gamble responsibly.
Thank you, Tristan. Seeing it similar to us, although Tristan actually has Penrith in favouritism, so that just goes to show you that there's not a consensus on that. Everyone thinks that Penrith and Melbourne will win this weekend, but then there's a massive debate over who's the better team and who would win if they met. And on one hand, you'd love to see that grand final. That's kind of the grand final we all deserve. And I think I said this 12 months ago. The grand final we need is Brisbane Penrith, because they were the best two teams. We wanted to see them hook up, and we got an all-time classic. And that's the case this year. It's just, it doesn't always work out that way. But having said that, we got two double-digit favourites that would need to be overcome to prevent that grand final. I've got a mixed matchup as well I'll share later. Clarky has sent through a clip but I'll include that at the midway point in the show. So let's just begin with the breakdown of the game at Amy Park on Friday night. The Storm are 10.5-point favourites over the Roosters. Melbourne are unchanged from the side that dismantled Cronulla in the second half, particularly week one of the finals. And as you'd expect, Bellamy hasn't changed the team, although Farlongo is probably an option this week. He can't be squeezed into even the interchange because of the presence of Wishart. The Roosters also haven't changed a winning team. Radley got a late start at lock, and this week Will Ware, 13. It's been an awesome rivalry over the years between these clubs. It was the 2018 grand final. I'll tell you now, it should have been the 2017 grand final as well. And much has been made over your Roosters, Benny. I say that as your proud Roosters fan. Their record, especially in the 2020s, against not only Penrith, but the Storm as well, and the inability to match it with these big boys in recent years. So can I start there? Is that a real factor in your eyes? And then please take us through your other angles in this match.
Yeah, so I think Phil Gould was touching on it during the week. I think he mentioned, it was out of 24 games against Storm and the Panthers, I think the Roosters have only won one. So it's a pretty telling stat. And he did sort of mention, I feel like Storm are going to have a pretty bad game for the Roosters to win. I just like looking at the teams, it's hard to see where the Roosters can win. It's more like their forwards are probably better. The outside backs are probably on par. They've definitely got better halves, Melbourne. And the bench is, they've got a pretty big bench. So there's nowhere really, like in a game of chess where Trent Robinson can sort of win it. I feel like, if anything, they're just going to have to, like you said, probably get into a grind and just hope they get a few errors and a few calls that go their way and they put points on the table.
Well, let me push back straight away because you just said Melbourne has the better forwards.
Looking at wholly from their bench as well, I feel like, I just feel like they've got a lot of oomph off the bench as well. I think the starting, that's going to be the problem. I think we can start with them, the Storm, but when their bench comes on, they've got a pretty decent, experienced bench. Like when you've got Christian Welsh on the bench, an experienced Origin forward, he's played a lot of finals. He's not going to make those errors, whereas you've got a rookie coming through who's been pretty good for us. And it's pretty hard playing finals. We've seen a few players crumble so far this series from being a rookie, and that finals experience sort of does pay dividends.
I can see your point, and collectively Melbourne's pack is really aimed up, and that was the question mark coming into this year, but they finished top of the ladder for a reason. I just feel, though, that the Roosters also have a lot of experience, have some gun forwards coming in off the bench too. When you look at how good Lenu was in Origin this year and what he's done off the bench for the Roosters as well, and the Roosters were definitely beaten to the punch against Penrith in week one, but now you've got Jared back as well that can add to that, early physicality. I'm looking at this game like, who's the best prop in this game? I'm not sure if it's Lindsay Collins or Spencer Leniu, but I think it's a Rooster. Who's the best edge forward in this game? It has to be Angus Crichton. Who's the best lock forward in this game? I think it's Victor Radley. I'll go as far to say the Roosters have the better pack, but Melbourne can negate that with being fresher, being at home for sure. And then I can't argue with you about the spine. Like, if you're going to compare units or position for position, how about this? Is there a single player in the spine that you would rather have the Rooster? And for me, the only one I would argue would be Teddy versus Pappenhausen. But I think Pappenhausen is quietly that good that it's a fair argument. And I may actually take Pappenhausen. And the thing about the 1, 6, 7, 9 for Melbourne and Wishart off the bench as well is they're all capable of hurting you. If you have a lapse, if you make a mistake, if there's a quick play the ball, if there's a half opportunity, so you don't know which one of them it's going to be. Like Jerome Hughes has been the best player this season, I believe, should win the Dally M, but it was more so Munster, reminding everyone what he's capable of in week one of the finals. Who's it going to be this weekend? Just whoever the opportunities present to, you're going to back any of them. I mean, Harry Grant also hat-trick week one of the finals. So that's probably the difference in the game for me. But what are your factors in terms of any opportunities betting? I'm not sure if you've got a bet on this one or a lean. And as someone that's had a lot of success with team totals, tell me how you see this playing out in terms of the over-under as well.
Yeah, so slightly differently from yourself, I did sort of feel like if this game is going to go the way I think, it probably will be tighter in the first half and then Melbourne maybe pulling away in the second half. I would probably lean the tries overs. I think it was 8.5, but it's slightly, you would never get a 7.5, but yeah, it's slightly high for that. And then it's a bit, for me, taking the total points at 45 is quite high. So it's, not strong enough of a play. But I think if you're going to back unders for anything, I think the first half is the way to go. So I can see why you've done that because, I just feel like Melbourne being rested, if anything, I think they'll go into another gear, which the Roosters can't or don't have in the second half. So it'll be a lot safer to go that first half, hoping it turns into a bit of a grind.
So you're not too confident on your team then? I mean, if you think there's going to be 9 or more tries in this game, it's hard to believe that the Roosters are going to score 4 of those, right, or more to be in it. I mean, if you think there's 9 tries in the game, maybe you should go over the 45.5 because 9 tries is definitely going to get you there. Maybe 8 tries may well get you over 45.5. I feel like there is an opportunity with the double there that a Roosters and an under, and maybe that's a Roosters covering, or a Storm covering the line and an over. That's the style of game I think that each of those sides are looking for. Do you feel that Melbourne is more likely to cover the line because you do see it a little higher scoring?
No, well, same goes with the Roosters. I feel like the Roosters can score points and, the outside backs, they're quite good. And I think they're probably, like you said, like Teddy, I probably would rate Teddy over Pat at the moment, at least. You just need a few players to have their best games. Like if Crichton was on, Tupanua, he's been out of form like the last year or two, going off memory, but I feel like the last couple of games he's actually picked up going back to some of that really good form he used to have. And if he can have a cracker somehow, I feel like there is a chance for the Roosters. I feel like, a lot of players will have to play one of their best games for it to be really competitive.
That's a fair point. You could kind of say Melbourne's just got so much class, that they're home, fresh, focused, that Melbourne will score. So the Roosters' only chance is that they're going to have to take their opportunities. I look at the Roosters saying, all right, they can come in with no fear. Yes, 1 win from the last 24 against the Panthers and Storm, but there's individual circumstances in some of those games. Roosters were close at a couple of them. Roosters just weren't as good as those teams or had a lot of injuries, some of those seasons. But the Roosters don't fear Melbourne, and they know that the blueprint to winning, I believe, for the Chooks is if you can win the ruck, if you can win the forward battle, that you can make more meters, you can get the territory where you can have a few more of the attacking kicks. Maybe you can generate some points off field position and somewhat limit the good ball sets for the Storm where the Storm can hurt you. I can't go past Melbourne winning this game, for the obvious reasons, and they're still the better team, and it's their game to lose in a way. So while I've got respect for the Roosters, I'm going to tip a Storm 1-12 with a slight lean to the start with the Roosters, the 10.5 start, but not quite best bet confidence. Did you have a lean on the side?
I was just going to ask you what your lean on the line was. Not on the line. I probably would take the Roosters, but probably being biased to 10.5. But if it's going to go the way I think it'd probably be a 1-12 Melbourne as well.
Let's have a listen to Clarky. He's going to weigh in on both the games, so I'll bring his clip in now.
Clarky here on the 7 Cs. Great to see James Tedesco score for Clarky's Collect. Even better, he scored 2. You guys know I like to keep it safe, so we did get the 1 try there. Winnie got all his bets, so a clean sweep there. My predictions for this round, going to keep it nice and simple. Pretty much going to go Storm and Panthers for all the same reasons I said in week 1. And to keep it even more simple for you guys, they now have another week rest, so I don't need to go into that too much. As for Clarky's Collect this week, well, I can't access betting apps because I'm on the ship's Wi-Fi, so I need to be in Australia. So I'm going to give a special chance here to 2 listeners who have listened all year, Ryan Whitaker and Colt Sando. Now, a lot of people watch the show all year, but those 2 are always in the comment section every single year, every single show rather. I know they're in the comment section right now, so talk amongst yourselves there, lads. You guys have Clarky's Collect. You've got the reins this week, so hopefully it's a best bet, and hopefully everyone enjoys their preliminary finals footy. Cheers, guys.
So I got Clarky to weigh in, and he's also expects the likelihood there of Panthers Storm. But has he copped out there? I mean, I know a lot of people were looking forward to his Clarky's Collect and off another winner, and he's something like plus 15 units. But Clarky was really excited to give that opportunity over. I mean, shout out Ryan Whitaker, who's in the chat, and Colt. These guys tune in, every week. I bet you boys didn't tune in tonight expecting that the pressure would be on your shoulders to come up with a bet. So what I'd love to do, if you boys are up for it, is comment your favorite play of the weekend, Ryan and Colt, and I'll see if I can read those. And if they don't clash, I think I'll try and tie them together so that I can literally announce what Clarky's proxy collect is going to be for this weekend. Let's move to Saturday, where the AFL Grand Final is on. I'd actually love to hear some bets and predictions in the comments of this show as well. I did touch on the AFL. I mean, last week I gave you that bonus pick of the Lions. They got up, helped us win the mixed matchup, and that was an insane prelim, Lions-Cats there. The irony now that we have a AFL Grand Final between Sydney and Brisbane taking place in Melbourne, and then very highly likely that a Melbourne team will be in the Sydney Rugby League Grand Final. But anyway, after that big event, we are at a core on Saturday night where the Panthers are an 11.5 favourite over Cronulla. I've seen a 12.5 as well on Dabble. So just always like to shout that out if I see a line either side of a key number. And since I mentioned that, I believe the line for Storm Roosters is still 9.5 on Sportsbet and 365. So it goes without saying, you guys know this much by now. You like the favourite, you want to lay the 9.5 on Friday night, and you want to lay the 11.5 on Saturday. But if you like the underdog, get the plus 10.5 Friday night with Roosters, get the plus 12.5 Saturday night with Cronulla. Being able to shop around, we could all win if it does land, on that key number where the bookies don't often get it that wrong. So there's a fair chance the final margin could be in that vicinity. And Penrith have named the same side that crushed the Roosters early in that week 1 qualifying final, although Sorensen is a strong chance to be included from the reserves. Sharks, ditto, same side that won, which didn't have a late inclusion of Jesse Ramian. And like Penrith, the Sharkies got out to a 4-try lead out of the blocks, and that was the foundation of a nice win, though Cronulla got a little scare late from the Cowboys. When these sides met earlier this season, do you remember that game, Benny?
The Panthers Sharks?
Yes, Cronulla was a favourite.
Flogged.
Do you remember what happened?
They got flogged, absolutely.
Yes, that's right. Nathan Cleary was out. The Sharks were in some great form. I tipped the Sharks as a best bet at home, only for them to lose as a favourite, 42-0. So let me ask you what you learned from that match, and is Cronulla any chance of turning the tables this weekend?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I feel like whatever team was going to win out of the Cowboys and Sharks, I was basically going to fade. And, and that was the Sharks. And, I just can't see them scoring enough points against Penrith. I think the extra week's rest, if anyone needed it more, it's the Panthers needed it. I feel like they were limping into the finals with one leg, and the fact they beat the Roosters and now they've had that extra week off. I just can't see the Panthers getting points put on them and losing.
And that would work from my angle as well. Again, my best bet is under 7.5 tries at $1.90. How about this stat then, Benny? The Sharks have not scored a point versus the Panthers in over 800 days.
Yeah,
can you believe that?
I've got it right up for it already, and yeah, it's the same.
And if you
right
add it up in game minutes, it's nearly 4 hours of game minutes as well. And that's not in Penrith. That's any time against Penrith. So I'm with you. It's hard to see Cronulla scoring a lot of points here. I look at the Roosters and as a really professional outfit that all season long has believed they could win the comp. And yes, they had the injury setbacks, but they still kind of have that mentality, we can win, and they expect to win. And that's why I talk about the Roosters being fearless down in Melbourne. I don't think I can say the same for Cronulla. I think there probably is in the back of the mind a realistic fear of Penrith and what Penrith can do. And I don't know if the Sharkies players really believe they can win the premiership. But what I will say about Cronulla is they do get to play pressure-free, nothing to lose, because they got the monkey off the back with the finals win last week, and they do get to come into this game against Penrith and just let it loose and really can't get too much criticism or, get too much blame for wasting an opportunity here, because Penrith's won 3 straight comps and is in the absolute box seat. So there's something to be said for a team with nothing to lose. If the Sharkies can defend, at least the way we saw in the first half last week against the Cows, and then are willing to play their footy, and we saw what Trindle was capable of last week, and now it would be the time for Nico to kind of justify that big price tag and to play the way he is capable of. The Sharkies can't go into their shell in this game. Absolutely. Cronulla's got to play some footy, and Penrith's not going to give you many opportunities. And when you're attacking Penrith's line, Penrith is so hard to breach, but Cronulla's going to have to find a way to be any chance in this. I'll throw it back to you before I kind of discuss how I see maybe the side, but I definitely agree with a lower scoring game, which is Cronulla's only chance as well, by the way. So that's kind of what Cronulla wants in general, because they can't let Penrith, run away and hide here on the scoreboard. But it sounds like you lean to Penrith as well as potentially unders.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right. So yeah, Sharks under 15.5 at $1.94 on Sportsbet. I just feel like I feel like the Sharks probably played the grand final last week. They got the win. Like you said, I feel like there's probably not much pressure for them to win. And I don't think they have that it's not done yet attitude. Like you said, like the Roosters, it G'd me up a little bit when I saw them actually posting something. There's 2 games left. I think, the Roosters probably do have a bit of belief that they can beat Melbourne. And, even though they've got those sort of stats against them, I don't think the Sharks do. They had a pretty soft draw. They've had a pretty easy run as well. Like I think the Cowboys are probably one of the worst teams in the 8, and they somehow got through. And then the Sharks also just got handed a win, I feel like, and I don't think they'll get much favours from a rested Penrith. Yeah,
it's a tough task, that's for sure. If I'm going to try and nitpick Penrith, I am going to say that Cleary's still somewhat a slight risk, because I don't feel like he was pushed to the limit of having to do everything in that first week of the finals, because they just got out of the blocks and then they could play more measured and controlled. And Cleary has had problems with a shoulder injury that we know needs off-season surgery, and a hamstring that has happened a couple of years in a row. So there's always that. When I go back to the tight refereeing, the refs just don't want to be seen to having an impact on these games. And I actually hope, I don't know if this really happens behind closed doors in terms of the instructions given to refs, but I kind of hope that there'd be a suggestion to the refs of like, can you not penalise the hell out of these underdog teams early and give them no chance to win? And so we have to hear all week how we didn't get any exciting footy games, because kind of last week, well, the Cowboys came back a bit, but last week we saw 2 pretty comfortable wins. We've seen the favourite win every game. the AFL gets credit for, that epic prelim last week. The grand final is a 3.5 point favorite only. It would be nice if, I know the NRL might want this blockbuster grand final, but it would be nice if these games were in the competitive balance. And I'm seeing that trend of like very few 6 agains and penalties as opposed to, and that's also partly a greater level of discipline because of the importance of these teams. But what I'm getting at is that helps Cronulla, I believe, because Penrith is this team with these meter eater outside backs that get the sets started on the right foot and that, and win the yardage battle. And if Cronulla can push the limits of the refereeing and slow the ruck at all, how tight are they going to call downtown on kick chase? Like, I feel like Cronulla, and this probably goes for the Roosters as well, you're going to definitely test the referees out, and the refs, I feel, don't want to set a precedent early in the game of blowing their whistle or making too many calls. And I feel like that not only gives the underdogs a little bit of a chance, but bodes well for unders. So I've talked about how do the Sharks win this game. So they'd have to turn out their best defensive performance of the season and then hope that they can find a moment or two of brilliance from your Tricky Trindle, your Nico, your Kennedy. I mean, Britton Nakora also is one of the form players in the comp, I have to say. And, he got that try against Melbourne, but that was as good as it got for the Sharkies. But what I want to say overall is, if I look at the 4 teams that remain, and this is my personal opinion, I actually believe that the Sharks and the Roosters are slightly underrated. I feel generally people don't realise how good the Roosters are, and there's several reasons for that, and part of it is Roosters have underperformed, and, the game got totally away from the Roosters in week 1 of the finals, so the Roosters didn't really get a chance to show that they could go toe-to-toe with Penrith. I feel like the Roosters have got that in them. I think the Roosters can make it interesting Friday. And I also think the Sharks, you said it there, Benny, as well, like that they've had an easy run or whatever. I mean, I think that's a little bit dismissive. I mean, you could have bet on the Sharks against the Cowboys last week. If you really feel that the Cowboys were a bit of a pushover. I don't know. I feel like people often dismiss the Sharkies, but there's something to be said for being in the top 4, because I've heard people discuss about how the Sharks were even lucky to make the 4. I just think a Sharks team that had one Origin player this year, and that was McInnes only playing game 1, which they lost and then dropped. It generally doesn't have as many household names. People may not realise actually how good this Cronulla side is. So I came to this weekend thinking I can't really bet against the Sharks or the Roosters because I do think they're slightly underrated. But that's not me saying that the Storm and Panthers are overrated. I think that they're appropriately rated. I think everybody knows that Melbourne and Penrith are juggernauts, and everyone is kind of right about that. So I didn't really want to go against the Storm or Panthers either, but I was tempted with these lines, and I would lean to the underdog with the start in both games. So I already said the way I see Friday night is Storm 1-12. I'll say the same. Saturday night, I will tip Penrith 1-12, with my favourite way to play each game being the unders angles. Have you got any other factors in this game you wanted to discuss, Benny?
Yeah, not really. I feel like you're right in a sense with the Sharks. I think a lot of the public do find them they're shit. There's nothing more in the media at the moment besides Nico Hines and how he hasn't performed, and I think the media are bashing on him a lot. I think that there's a general consensus with the public that the Sharks are, but yeah, my argument is I think they're even worse than that, really. I feel like I just don't feel like they're in the same category as the Panthers. They're definitely not. And yeah, I did actually contemplate backing the Sharks, but they're just two teams I both think overrated. And yeah, I couldn't really. I think, did they end up getting backdoored, the Sharks, or the line? What was the line?
Last weekend?
Yeah, for the Cowboys Sharks. I'm trying to remember what the line was.
No, it was only 3.5. So
I
one
still
more
would've
one
covered.
more Cowboys try would have done it.
Yeah, that would
And
have
I
been
was
a shame.
puckering. I was expecting it.
Yeah, I was very, don't get me wrong, I was very close because, I do rate the Sharks over the Cowboys, but I still think there were two of those teams where the line was probably about right. But
Now I'm
I
reading the comments. Oh, sorry, you carry on. If you got more on the game.
I just can't see it really going any other way besides, although maybe a 24 sort of 12 scoreline is what I'm sort of expecting.
And that would suit my best bet fine. And let me get to the mixed matchup. What I seem to have been able to garner out of these comments is Ryan has played Roosters plus 10.5. So let's make that Ryan's leg for Clarky's Collect. But then when I read Colt's comment, he's going Harry Grant anytime try scorer. So why don't we go a same game multi of Roosters plus 10.5, Harry Grant anytime try. And what I'll suggest, officially, we've tracked Clarky's Collect as if you have 100 on it or whatever, 1 unit. I'd say you only need a half unit on that. That's going to be paying around $10. So Clarky's Collect this week is going to be a half unit, same game multi, Harry Grant try, Roosters plus 10.5. I will find the best odds for that, and I'll let Clarky know that that's what's been decided. So there you go, guys.
You be happy about that one?
Pardon me?
Do you think Clarky would be happy about that bet?
Hey, he's put it in their hands. To be honest, I think he's pretty jolly. He's having the time of his life and plenty of drinks deep.
If you know about a VPN, you might need to get a VPN happening.
Yeah, I was talking to Clarky about that, but we'll take that discussion offline. Okay, that's Clarky's Collect. I've given my best bets. Benny's, again, is under. Sharks under 15.5 at $1.94 on Sportsbet. Let's come up with the mixed matchup. Now, again, if I have to lean, I'm leaning to the underdogs. My mixed matchup is going to be combined winning margin of the two prelims under 26.5 points. And that is at even money, $2. So I've said that both favourites are going to win 1-12. That would mean we couldn't be any higher than a 24 combined margin. We've got 26 points to play with. So think about how many points you think the winning team of Friday night, will get up by. If the Storm wins by 8 points, then we would still have 18 to play with for Sharks Panthers. But if you think the Storm's going to win by 20, then we would need Sharks Panthers to be 1-6. Right? So you've got to have some belief in these underdogs, and particularly that neither one gets blown out, because one big result, if either game is won by a margin of 26 or more, it's over. And if it's even in the 20s, you're getting a very small kind of needle to thread there. So if you liking the sort of either 1-12, I find it very unlikely that either underdog is going to win by a big score and screw us up here. So I think if the underdogs win, it's very narrow. And if the underdogs give a good game of us, it's potentially kind of single digits. And if we get that in either game, it gives us a great chance. So that's my favorite way to play it. If you've got any belief that we get some entertaining and competitive footy this weekend, that's my mixed matchup. Find that on Toppy. And that should do us, mate. So if you got anything else you wanted to share for tonight, or otherwise you'll probably put that best bet in the group with your full write-up, right?
Yeah, I've just posted on there actually, so everyone can have a look at that, and a bit more of a detailed write-up on why. But I think hopefully, like you said, Ashley Klein puts away the whistle and lets the game be a good game. And I think the Panthers probably do have that in the back pocket as such, because I think they're competing a lot with the AFL at the moment when it comes to the viewership and whatnot. So the powers to be might have that in the back of their mind.
I hope so. I always hope for exciting games. I really feel like you get to see what teams are made of, and every play really matters when games are in the balance. And I just feel like, as every favourite has won so far, now fair enough, Bulldogs Manly was basically pick them, and was an awesome game. I just want more footy like that. Call me selfish. So that's why I'm not. That's also how I see it, that there's a possibility that these underdogs could be friskier than your general punter expects. But also, I would love to see it. Love to see the best footy we can get this weekend before the big dance. Thanks again to you, Benny, making the time and joining me tonight. Thank you to everyone who jumped in the comments or just watched us or listens anytime. Let us know after the show as well what you make of the best bets of Benny's bet. What are you now, Benny? So you're 19-3?
I think it's 19-3 or 18-3. Yeah, 19-3.
Which is what, 88%? Yeah,
87%. Yeah, 86.
Not too bad at all, mate. So best of luck carrying that. Getting probably back into the 90s if you do get a win this week, and we'll definitely get you involved in a grand final preview as well. I'll most likely do the recap Sunday morning, guys, with no footy Sunday arvo. But have a great week until then, and enjoy your rugby league. Thanks, everyone. Lego.